Anirudh, welcome to SpeakEasy with Dheeraj Sinha. So good to have you.
Thank you for having me. And we've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm glad we could make it happen.
Yes, absolutely. So, Anirudh, I'll cut straight to the chase, right? You've been with private banking, private equity, and so on and so forth, and now running a content and gaming company, right? How did the shift happen? And are you enjoying this more? Are you enjoying playing with content more than you enjoyed playing with money?
I think you're doing all of those regardless of which profession you're in a weird way. When we were in banking, people used to say, "Oh, do you like making pitch decks?" And I liked it. I didn't mind it. It was part of the job, which is also content and actually one of the most important thing and interesting things that you work on, both as a banker and as well as an investor, and most importantly as an entrepreneur, is the equity story, right? So
Yeah.
storytelling is always important, and it's not only equity story always implies that, oh, you're only talking to investors, but actually it's the same story you're telling your team members, you're telling vendors, you're telling clients, and you're telling yourself, most importantly. So I think it's been an important lesson for me very early that these things are important. Communication, markets, they all form important aspects of what ends up being a fulfilling journey as a professional. Now, in terms of how I got into this, I have always been interested in content. I took a film class in school, but I didn't think of it as a profession. Obviously, like there's again nobody from my family who's either an entrepreneur or someone who works in the media industry, right? So none of that. We're mostly doctors and teachers and some engineers.
Yeah.
For me, the journey happened. I worked in banking. I always joke that was my undergraduate education in business, and then went to Wharton. And while I was at Wharton doing my business school, Ashwin, who was my co-founder and partner, he had moved in the meanwhile. He used to be my roommate in college as well, so we go back a really, really long way. He had moved back to India to explore the film industry, and he used to keep, sending me scripts and ideas and saying, "Hey, look at this interesting thing." And I used to read it, and obviously you love the content industry, you love films, and yeah, it used to attract me. And then once I graduated business school and worked at a hedge fund for a year, I had some visa trouble in the US, as they're less forgiving to immigrants now.
Yeah.
They're less open to them. So I said, okay, I got a bit emotional and said, okay, look, I can go back to the Middle East where I used to work and continue my banking and investing journey, or I can try something new, which I've always wanted to try. And I felt that when I'm 50, I'm not going to regret doing this, because at 50, whether I have a little bit less money, or if I made a certain position inside an investment bank or a private equity fund 2 years later, it's not going to be that relevant. But if I don't take an opportunity to explore something interesting and new, then I would definitely regret that. So I made the jump. I came to India. Ashwin and I, initially he was at Times Studio, working on a bunch of interesting films. I was just kind of hanging out, and then we got talking about how to start something new, and that's how we got started. And it's been an amazing journey, and within a blink of an eye, it's almost been, next year is going to be 10 years, and
Amazing.
doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Except when I look in the mirror and I don't have as much hair on my head, more on my face than on my head.
Yeah. So America's lost in India's game. That's an awesome story. So Anirudh, I want to dial into the whole gaming part of your venture first, and then we'll come back to talk about content part later. And the gaming market is developing very interestingly, right? I mean, right from pay for getting paid for playing kind of whole market to other stuff, and you've kind of narrowed it down, right, to, I mean, what you're doing with Loco around live game streaming, right? So it's a bit of a tight segmentation in that sense. So why Loco? Why live game streaming? Why go so sharp and so specific?
Yeah, see, when we started Pocket Aces, and in Pocket Aces, the mission is to solve boredom and kind of provide entertainment in different spheres and platforms where people consume content, right? And while we were doing that journey, we were sitting basically at the forefront of the consumer entertainment experience. So
Yeah.
we were, day in, day out, I still do it, and, day in, day out, chatting with users, chatting with, audience members on my Instagram, on my Facebook, not less Facebook, but much more now on Instagram, etc., where I just talk to folks and get a sense for what they're looking at,
Yeah.
what are their hopes and aspirations. And one thing that was very clear to us is that, look, once we had built on the Pocket Aces side, once we had built kind of the social distribution direct to consumer content business, which is, obviously our bread and butter business there. We had added a studio business where we were making shows for guys like Netflix, Amazon, etc. And then the third business we added there was Cloud, which is again came out of the first two businesses where we represent talent and help them both with their business side of the world as well as their careers and their artistic aspirations. We felt that, okay, next thing for us to do is to build our own platform. And when we looked at that, we looked at kind of where the consumer experience was lacking or where it was going. And we felt there were two sort of places where a platform could be built. One was on short form content, and this I'm talking about like late 2017. And the second
Yeah.
was essentially interactive entertainment. So on short form, we felt very strongly that Facebook would be making a big play there. They had
Yeah.
they already had Instagram out. It was not as dominant in terms of popular culture as it is today. But what I'd also seen was Musically, and I actually am one of the original kind of TikTok Musically fans. And I had actually made a video with one of our senior engineers very early, and I made the video and I was like, wow, like this is an insane software. Like, I was reminded of the MTV days, when you first saw a video and you're like,
Yeah.
this is pretty cool. And I felt like, oh, this would normally cost someone 15, 20 lakhs to make, and I've just made it for $0, and it looks pretty good. And I suck at content making. So someone who's much more talented and much more creative will kill it. So we felt that we would get very competitive in the short form space, and we didn't really have any product or community insight which was so special. Minus just the fact that I would say very at the outset was, look, people were sharing content on messaging. So I think that was the basic thing to say. Okay, look, short form content, no real moat there yet. And then interactive entertainment, we felt there was nothing at all. And interactive entertainment obviously means gaming, and gaming is the heartbeat of that. So that's how Loco got started. And we were actually thinking initially of launching interactive quiz platform. And while we were thinking that, as it always happens, three young engineers in Bangalore had already started building it. We started building it, and so we quickly got introduced to them, and they were building this platform called Showtime. And we went there, and I met Chetan, Sushil, and Maddie, and there were three people there. And Chetan is still our CTO and very much the technical leader in the company. And Sushil was with us for a long time, and we took over the company. I mean, there was no company that basically made a platform, and there was very little else. And so we kind of purchased the asset and refashioned it as Loco. We called up Gaurav Kapoor, got Gaurav on the show. Literally, it was all of this must have happened. I was going to Kuwait, where my parents still live, and Ashwin called me and told me about these guys, and so I changed my flight and instead went to Bangalore, spent all of Christmas and New Year's there.
Yeah.
And by I think the first week of Jan, we had the deal stitched up, and I think 7 days later we met Gaurav Kapoor, and I think Gaurav was hosting the show. So that was the beginning of sort of our journey into gaming.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that consumers don't just want to consume; they want to be in immersive environments. It shouldn't be hard, but
Yeah.
it has. Once you immerse people in a better and more immersive environment, they're not going to switch back. And I think you can look at whether it's a larger television, higher definition content, all of that is going in that direction, right? And we felt gaming was already offering a lot of what interactive would do. It's just that India and our internet and our phones had not gotten there yet. We were not console heavy, so that's how we initially then added hyper casual games. And 2019 then was a big change of mind for us because we felt that we were at a crossroads. Either we become a real money gaming company and
Yeah.
sort of kind of start competing with the likes of MPL and Winzo and
Yeah.
Dream 11, most importantly on the fantasy side, uh, or we stick to what we know best, where we know the waters we know best, which was engagement. And we saw 2019, one big change was that PUBG Mobile had broken out, and they were
Yeah.
doing, at that time they were 50 million MAU, and they had grown to about 100 million very quickly after that. Free Fire came in as well and started capturing the imagination and user base. So finally, we saw games that could be fun to watch because they were a right combination of skill and strategy, which is what most sports are actually.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, 11 people kicking around a ball, you can also say is not a sport, but actually it
Yeah.
is a sport and the most popular one, of course, because it has the right amount of skill and strategy. And that's where game streaming then to us became a very obvious next step, which is that, look, where are they going to broadcast this? And then as we spent time with it, we felt more and more convinced that as people spend time in virtual worlds, which is what these games are, they're virtual playgrounds basically. That's the
Yeah.
way to think of them. Like we played cricket or football as kids, but those were excuses or not excuses, or they were the backdrop to for friendships to happen, for us to go and create a sense of community around us when we were younger. And that's what is happening in these games. People are hanging out, and today you don't have to only hang out with people in your neighborhood or in your school. You could hang out with anyone, and
Yeah.
that we felt that, look, if people have to share their memories from these sort of, or their experiences from these sort of virtual backgrounds and virtual playgrounds, then where are they going to do it? Because they can't do it on Facebook, because now your grandson
Yeah.
is on Facebook. So
Yeah.
it's not the right thing. Real life memories, obviously, you're putting on Instagram, etc. So that's how we started focusing very, very narrowly, as you're rightly saying, look, we're just going to do game streaming and we're going to move forward with that. And I think 2020 obviously came in, and I always think of 2020 as a long year that has not ended till now because of COVID. But that has given us, obviously, the growth has been phenomenal. So I think in some ways that has proven out our thesis, where we were a bit early, of course. So
Yeah. No, that's
it's
fantastic. You're
been
saying
crazy.
it's gaming meets social interaction, right? And coming off the two platforms in that sense into one, and live streaming thrown in. Give us a sense, Anirudh, how deep is this phenomenon? I mean, we know for sure that gaming is getting democratized in India, right? I mean, with Geo and internet, and how cheap internet access is today in India. So of course, gaming is getting democratized. But where do you see your audiences coming from? Is it, I mean, like most of the platforms, is it also going down to tier two, tier three? Is it a deep phenomena? Is it wide, or do you still feel that the breakout hasn't yet happened, and there's still time to come? Where are we with respect to that?
I think gaming is phenomenal because, unlike how you would normally segment content and content audiences, where we always used to use this India and Bharat and tier one, tier two.
Yeah.
This is a pan-India phenomenon, and much like cricket, right? You have Virat Kohli is from West Delhi, where I also grew up for some time, but Mahendra Singh Dhoni is from Ranchi, and someone else is from Bangalore. Like, these are, some are urban, some are rural, some are very rural. There is no correlation. This is not like cricket in the 60s where everybody's from Bombay or Delhi. Like, they're mostly, it's a diverse playing field, and it's the same thing in gaming. Gaming is super diverse. If you look at some of our top esports players, they come from across the country, and even streamers, and there is a pretty healthy overlap amongst those two. I mean, I use this example quite often, but it's quite telling. There's on our platform, one of the superstars is Mavi. He is from Sangrur, which is now famous thanks to the new chief minister there. And before that, nobody knew it was a small town. And against him, playing against him often is Jonathan, who is from Bandra, right? As urban as they come.
Yeah.
So,
Amazing. Yeah.
so there is a huge span there in terms of where people are playing, and I think it talks about kind of how entertainment is going to evolve. Right? Entertainment, I feel, is not a luxury anymore. It used to be perceived as that it's a need today for people to disconnect from their life, sometimes to connect with other people. And if you are in a rural part of the country, you may not have playgrounds, you may not have a mall, but today with a phone, you can compete with anyone. And
Yeah.
I think that allows for the creation of a pan-India phenomenon. And so you're seeing growth across the country. And if you ask me in terms of viewership, I would say we are still in the early phase. And the way I have a theory on this, I don't know if it's correct or not, and not data backed, it's just a theory I have, which is that when you start watching a sport, usually in a household or in a community, there are a few people who are kind of like the early adopters or the hardcore fans. They understood it first, they got it first. Like my house, I love Liverpool. There's no good reason why I love it. I've been following the team since I was a kid, and but now my mom also knows a few players. Like she'll ask me, did he play today? Did so and so? How did so and so do today?
Yeah.
Right. So like she asks us, how did Salah do today? Did he score?
Yeah.
And she knows the name because now she's a casual observer. She watches maybe 1 and 3 games with me if she is home. That happens only when there is a hardcore fan. So I think we have reached that place where there are enough.
The dedicated minority is there, yeah.
Correct. That dedicated minority is there, and they are starting to show it to other people. And the good thing is, once you watch it, it doesn't seem so strange, and it actually gets more and more interesting because just like with another sport,
Yeah.
and I've had I think now I look back and say the pleasure or the good fortune of following some sports a little later in life, right? Like when you move to the US, nobody really watches, they watch football and they watch baseball. And picking up American football for me as a teenager was like obviously harder than, growing up with a sport where you know all the details. But now I kind of know it. And then you get interested because once you understand the basics, then you're like, oh, I see what play they've gone for, or so-and-so team has this particular specialty. And it's the same thing with this, essentially. I feel like over time, this will evolve into, having those characteristics, and the good thing is not one game. It's many games that are going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're going to see, a huge amount of viewership. Like I foresee, like, look, India's today is 700 million sort of users of the internet.
Yeah.
400 million quote unquote gamers, out of which 100 million, 150 million are playing these sort of games.
Wow.
My guess is that out of them, 30-40% are watching right now, and regularly, and casually, I would say even closer to all of them will start watching. So getting to for us as a platform to get to 100 million, 200 million MAU mark is very doable. What will happen in 3-4 years is that we won't say gamer, this word, anymore, because it'll be like asking, do you watch movies? Like, and nobody really asks how many movie goers are there.
Just another form of entertainment, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody does it. So,
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see this market being pretty large. And I think this is from a quantitative point of view. From a qualitative point of view, or a soft thing, which a lot of our investors don't like talking about that, but I always get a lot of value from that, which is that seeing young, like my nephew, he called me and he said, hey, I want to meet Scout, right? And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I watch his streams and all that. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And he's like 14 or something. And then one of Ashwin's family friends, he was at a party, he asked them like, hey, who's your favorite athlete? And in our generation, we are usually now looking at a younger generation saying, oh, it's probably going to be Hardik Pandya or, Rishabh Pant. Just the same way for us, it was, Sachin and then Rahul, Dravid or whatever, right? And then Dhoni's generation. But interestingly, the person he asked said Jonathan, and he was shocked because he was not expecting that at all. And I think that goes to show you that culturally also younger people are gravitating more towards this and are coming back to quantitative. You're seeing the average concurrency for some of these streams. It's already bigger than non-India cricket, right? Like
Amazing.
We get 300,000, 400,000 people watching live. We've had, and the engagement is nuts. So, obviously we're not obviously at the size of cricket yet, or
Yeah.
India cricket, I would say, but it's going to get there quickly because all your viewers are going to be able to start playing these games, and that I think, and as you get older, you can still play. You may play less and less, but as a mental model, like if you can play a game, you're going to be much more engaged in watching it. So I think
Yeah.
we're at the start of a pretty long cycle here, and very interesting to see where it goes as well.
Yeah, and you're building cultural heroes, right? Just like sports does. How are you thinking about how does marketing and brand building interact with this? A and B, how would monetization models shape up? Would it be largely marketing, advertising funded plus subscription based? So two questions there really in my mind.
Yeah, I think, just before I answer your question, you said something really, really important, I think, which is that it's building cultural icons,
Yeah,
building pop culture and cultural heroes, and I think that's 100% happening.
yeah,
And I think the number of role models we'll come up with in this will be much more than what a sport can do. Because obviously, for let's say if you were a basketball federation or whatever, you want to create the next basketball team in India, you can do it. It's going to take you 15, 20 years minimum because that's how much time it takes. But we already have, for some of the mobile games, the top players in the world in India. And so I think, as more mobile games come out, India is going to be the place where, much like cricket, where the best and most interesting talent comes out because they're just playing a lot more and they're spending that time.
yeah.
And culturally also that's going to be important. So I think you're right. And therefore, as we go towards the models of monetization, early days there, but look, I think the simplest and most well understood model of monetization is obviously going to be advertising and brand building through branded content, as well as normal inventory buying on platforms like ours. That's understood. I think that's for us also the easiest go to market. Obviously knowing at Pocket Aces, we've worked very closely with advertisers and served them very well.
So you know
We'll
that
bring that
game, yeah.
same, yeah, and so we will bring that same ethos, obviously, should we go down that path. We already have, we've done tests with a bunch of advertisers and they've seen great results. Even non-endemic brands like a Gillette, for example, done a great job. They're seeing great results. And I think they're very smart that they're moving into it early enough where, they're going to reap much more rewards than when it becomes kind of hygiene, which will happen in 4 or 5 years. You just need to have one of these platforms in your media plan. Apart from that, transactions and therefore subscriptions both become
Yes,
interesting.
yeah.
Like we already have a bunch of virtual gifting. We're not charging for it right now. We're charging for it using soft currency, which is earned through time spent on the platform. So it's not free entirely, but it's not paid either. So it's kind of a signal towards payment. And we are seeing very encouraging results. Most, the amount of people who are using virtual gifts is insane, and that then creates completely new monetization channel which has not been really scaled in India yet. But I think obviously now with UPI etc., that's creates a completely new
Yeah.
business model there. And also, it's not one or the other. I think India will have both. And what will also happen is there will be some intersection. So, for example, you may have a Pepsi week on Loco where any particular type of sticker is free because Pepsi made it free for you. Now that actually is Pepsi aligning themselves with you as a fan,
Yeah.
and not telling you no, send a sticker which only says Pepsi ki bottle or whatever, or there's it has a bottle and whatever their tagline is. They could do that too, but just simple gestures like this will also end up being interesting models. Obviously, wherever attention goes, advertisers will go. So I actually have no doubt in my
Yeah.
mind that advertisers will come to this format. I think what we as a tech company need to do is think hard about, how do we build the best product for them as well, right? How do we build the right product for them, and how do we build something that streamers can use easily? Like, should we give them, if you're building advertising, should we give them ad breaks? Should we give them full control, or should we force pre-roll ads? How other platforms do it? I think there is plenty of work to be done there. And then think about it also in terms of more interestingly engaged, whether it's sticker packs or whatever. And of course, this all presumes we don't do Web3, which is something that we are also looking
Yeah.
at actively.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are 2 points in this conversation where you kind of almost went there, right? I mean, transactions and gifting and immersive kind of a context. So, I mean, my question is, how far are we from metaverse? Is it still a very fancy we are there kind of a space, or are you building very, very rapidly?
So I have a slightly different take on the metaverse, and a maybe more generous take. Is that we are already in the metaverse, right? There
All
are
right.
different types of places. Like these are all places you hang out, right? Like if you go and play BGMI, it is a type of a metaverse. Like you can go and hang out. I play the game a lot, and my wife doesn't always like that because I'm obviously doing it, and I have a excuse
Yeah,
of that it's my job.
yeah.
But I love the game. So
And this on top of running a few companies, so I can imagine.
yeah, I love it's for me playing games, watching games, whether it's a sport or is like a relaxing activity. So I love doing it, and it obviously gives me benefit also. When you play these games, you also get to hang out with people from across India, and again, the diversity I've seen there is insane. So that is a metaverse in itself. Like they don't know who I am, but there is an avatar of me which is playing that game, and when I don't play well, they abuse me, and sometimes with choice words, which they shouldn't do, but they see that I suck, and so they make it
Yeah,
very known to me. Other times, people are just hanging out and they're just chatting
yeah,
about their life and what's going on, and which is also cool. And I think that, and interestingly, this is how a lot of squads have formed. Sometimes those squads have not even met each other till they've played at a reasonable level professionally. So I think we're already in a sort of metaverse, and now you're going to see a deeper engagement with that metaverse with Web3, right? So you can own certain products, you can trade certain products in ways that
yeah.
you couldn't do earlier, or
But also the
in not as
currency
efficient a
piece,
way.
right? I mean, the currency piece is very, I mean, it's unique to the Web3 concept, right?
Yeah, there is a currency. I think the most important thing is the public ledger, is
Yeah,
the fact that I can prove that I own something. So the
yeah,
provenance is really, really critical. I think that's the most like simple way of thinking about the utility first. But
yeah,
obviously, when you decentralize things, a lot of good things can come out of it. And I think right now there is so much of debate about this is not fully decentralized, or this is fully centralized. This is not really DeFi. This is DeFi. Like there's a lot of debate.
yeah,
For me, the debate is actually like there is no debate in my mind around this. Like, will in 5 years from now, will you want to own some of
yeah,
these things versus not owning them? Yes, you want
yeah,
to own them. Should games still be entertaining? Yes, they should be entertaining. And so that's where you talked about play to earn earlier. I actually kind of don't love that expression because play to earn sounds like a job,
yeah,
which is not great. Like over time, you will see diminishing returns in terms of users. If you make it play and earn, which is that I play because I like the game, but now I
yeah,
also earn and I
yeah,
also collect. And that has immense value. Like if you told me from tomorrow, no, you must watch Liverpool and I will pay you for it. I'll do it for a few days, and then after sometime I'm going to be like, is it giving me a monetary return? And am I having fun? If I'm not having fun, there could be many other places where I make monetary
yeah,
return, right?
yeah,
So I think you're going to see the same thing here. We've not seen even the even a close second to kind of games that exist today. That will come, and they don't have to be fully decentralized. There might be some items which are which are NFTs or whatever, and so I think that we are very very we are very close to what other people
yeah,
define as metaverse. But in my definition, we are already there because we are
yeah,
already in these virtual places. We
yeah,
are already hanging out. We're already talking. We're playing. Now, yes, we are not working in the same way as Zuck would like, but I think there is some ways to go on that technology.
yeah,
Like VR,
yeah,
I love VR. By the way, I own a I own a Quest 2, and I actually been playing this cricket game non-stop. It's so much fun, and even like you can travel on it, you can do meditation. There's a lot of good applications, and it's only look, it's only $500-$600,
Yeah.
right? So which it is almost like it's cheaper than many phones. So I think we're not there yet with that piece of it.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
in terms of hanging out online, in terms of owning stuff online,
Yeah.
I think we've made tremendous progress.
Yeah. And what you're also saying that it'll be in parts. It won't be a 0-1 shift. I mean, you'll probably
It
begin
never
to
is.
play
It
with
never is,
NFTs
right?
and play with tokens, and then
Correct.
yeah.
It never is. I think there are going to be a lot of failures along the way. There's going to be speculation along the way. That's just like this is not my first spin in the rodeo. Like so,
Yeah.
I've seen how innovation kind of occurs. It doesn't, and even when you're building a company, right? It doesn't occur in a straight line. Obviously,
Yeah.
later you draw the Kager line, and then it
Yeah.
always looks straight.
Yeah.
But it never goes like that. You go out, you build something, you get feedback, you have a bad day, things
Yeah.
go down, then they go up. But broadly, I like using a mental model to say, like, in 5 years from now, will these things be true or not true?
Yeah.
And that gives you a sense for whether the trend is your friend and whether time is with you. And
Yeah.
I think with Metaverse, there is no question in my mind that we are
Yeah.
moving towards that. Now, a lot of what people label as, the Metaverse is here, is like, dude, it was already here. It was called Sims or whatever. Right? It's like saying Slack is a completely new, amazing thing. But
Yeah.
when I was younger, we had MIRC and internet relays hadn't existed. So
Correct.
it's obviously repackaging.
Yeah.
That's
You
like
build. Yeah.
yeah, that's also it's a showmanship. Like people
Yeah.
want to repackage things, and
Yeah.
but I think broadly in terms of the things that you kind of mentioned about owning tokens, figuring out what to do with them. I think
Yeah.
we're in the early phase of that, and that's only a positive thing for the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. And would you say it's time to have full-time professional gaming icons players in India, or we're still far from there?
No, we're there already. We're there already.
there.
Most of these guys, like the top guys, are full-time gamers. They're not
Yeah.
part-time. We have part-time guys also who are more. I would
Yeah.
say the part-time guys I've met are more entertainers. But
Yeah.
in the last 2 years, I've seen a lot of people go up that curve. Like they have. I'll give you examples. We have someone from near Karnal, and who's a streamer on the platform. Amazing grind, like grinds every day, like classic streaming. Streaming is hard work. It's not, it's not one video goes viral and so you're then
Yeah.
the love of the nation. You're usually you're playing with people in different customers. It's hard work. They're usually streaming for longer times. Today, this guy started with nothing on the platform. Today, he's one of the top 5 streamers on the platform. Doesn't
Wow.
really stream anywhere else. He has also gotten one of his friends as well as his brother to start streaming. They also have now started a little talent agency which represents a bunch of talent in Haryana
Wow.
and Punjab area.
Wow.
So it shows you where this is going, and
Yeah.
the scenes you see sometimes are amazing. One of the best players in the country. Often I see him. He's got a little quilt like a razai because it's cold and all, and he's playing. But he plays really well, and
Yeah.
I'm like fully like kitted out. Like I'm like, bro, I got everything going on, and I'm so slow when I'm playing the game. So I think that this is my theory again. I think the interior of the country and the as we like to call them, the tier 2, 3 towns, they will start producing insane
Yeah.
talent because they have. See, what do you need to actually get good at this is like you need to have some infra so that you can have access, which is there today. With gaming, it's truly democratized. You don't need to look a certain way. You need to have a basic phone, but other than that, a lot of things are super democratized. What you look like doesn't really matter. Your sex doesn't really matter. So I think that you're going to see people who put in the time and the grind are going to start rising and obviously have skill or some base talent or quality. So in terms of time spent, you're going to see a lot of people in those towns because they don't have as many options. So
Yeah.
I think you're going to see amazing talent come out of that.
Yeah. No,
That area.
there's an amazing visual of acing it from inside of a razai.
Yeah, it's insane. It is actually kind of insane.
Yeah, I wanted to shift gears a bit and talk about where you started, right? Which is the whole digital content piece, right? And you have a couple of plays there. And it's said that with youth, there's no attention span. I mean, the shorter the content piece, the better it is. But I also have a content point of view that they also have a lot of attention span because it's also the generation which binge watches the series, right? So it's both ways. My theory is that the threshold of what is good has gone up. I mean, you will no longer sit in front of Doordarshan and watch Krishi Darshan for 1.5 hours. Yeah, because the generation has so much
Both
available.
both of us are dating ourselves, but both of us know what that is.
Right. So tell me a few learnings on the content piece, Anirudh, because also you have 2 or 3 offerings there, right? And what's been the learning there, and what works, what doesn't work on that piece?
I actually completely agree with you, and this is obviously a contrarian point to what most people say in the popular media, which is that attention spans have declined. I actually don't think attention spans have declined. It's just that we have become better at entertaining ourselves in those attention spans. We were bored even earlier. We just didn't have anything to do. Like
Yeah.
you didn't have TikTok or you didn't have game streaming platform. These are like different platforms that we use today to entertain ourselves differently. If attention spans are so low, then how is it that on Loco people are spending 1 hour a day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And these are long sessions, 15, 20
Yes.
minute sessions, right? So just like a Netflix, we have long time spent. On the other hand, you have, someone like a Instagram or a TikTok getting 20, 30 sessions, probably also 3, 4 minutes. So I think we've just gotten good at using those attention spans. And I also feel, again, this is a theory I have. I don't have any, uh, you know, data to back it, but, I feel that every generation has that, that how our parents used to say, ki Kal Yug aa gaya hai. Matlab, there is, it's always this like fear of what is going to happen to me and
Yeah.
my kids, and everything is going to go down the drain. Whereas I feel it's the best time to live. I don't think you've ever been in a better time to live.
Yeah.
We just forget about disease and war and how frequently they happen because we have peacetime and we forget that. But today, easier than ever to learn something, easier than ever to connect with someone.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things have gotten better, minus maybe climate change. I think everything else is significantly better. And I think that if you look at old, history books or people who captured certain moments, you will see that they'll show bus stops where everybody's reading books or a newspaper, as if like the newspaper is the problem there. Same way the telephone. There's a very famous cartoon of a telephone being shown as a devil, like as if like there
Yeah.
is some problem with the telephone.
Yeah.
And there is no problem today. And people were like, no telephone, we cannot have it in our house. And then there was a time in the 90s, as you know, like every little room you went into, there was one telephone there. Right?
Yeah.
Even in the bathroom, there was a telephone. So I think it's the same thing with, for me, I don't think the attention span has changed at all. I think we've created amazing products that allow us to use attention spans more effectively. Um,
What kind of pieces have worked and what has not worked, for example, in the content space? Yeah.
See, I always feel for short form content, our theory has always been something that's relatable, something that makes you laugh, something that adds value to your day. Those are things that are
Yeah.
perennially going to be useful, right? And what does relatability then mean? Like, your identity is not a single homogeneous thing. It's a composite of various things, right?
Yeah.
So, you could, like, I'm Kashmiri, so if someone is singing something in Kashmiri or making a joke in Kashmiri, that has 2 layers which I like, right? I relate to it on two aspects, but I also like a joke, about Indians and the middle class, or like, so there is a lot of those things. So each of those, I think, is going to do better and better. And the fact that today there is no one editor sitting in the pulpit telling us, no, this is good. And like you're saying, Doordarshan, there was always a programming team which told us, okay,
Yeah.
this is good enough for you to watch. And now you don't have that. So I think what works well has a like wider span. There's also, I think, with TikTok in particular, the visual effects and the fun things that can happen also, that now actually adds a production quality to things,
Yeah.
right? Much like it did in film. So I think the what works, it has to be relatable, has to be fun, has to be something that either makes you laugh or inspires you. Those things will always do well regardless. And then things that make you go, wow, like, oh, like how
Yeah.
did I do that? Like, oh, this is really cool. So that, that will work well for sure. And we've seen that across all our content verticals. I mean, Filter Copy, the thesis was always to start with community-based content, relatable content, and we use insights from there to build longer shows like those that are there on Dice Media. And today, we have amazing talent in cloud, which makes very specialized content in one format. Like if you look at a fashion influencer, there is
Yeah.
a wow element obviously to it. You're like, wow, they're looking so good, or this is so cool. Their look is so cool. But also there's an education element to it, which is like, even I sometimes watch some of them to say, how do they even get into this dress? How do they wear this sort
Yeah.
of stuff? And they make it easier for you. And then I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like that's pretty cool. And so then I
Yeah.
just follow a few of those guys, right? And we rep some of those guys as well in cloud. So, for someone who's, whether it's grooming or whether it's just a look for a Saturday night or whatever, there's a whole lot of content out there today which was not available earlier, and all of that works quite
Yeah.
well. And of course, good old storytelling still works just as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Nostalgia works really well. So those are all of these are
Multiple.
identity
Yeah.
related or
Yeah.
information related. So
Yeah.
those are the
Yeah.
two buckets I
Very
would say.
interesting. Yeah. And I mean, brands and marketing have obviously figured that, how long will you push through communication? We all now want to be part of the consumption pattern, right? But from your perspective, because you're creating content and content needs to float first, right? And like in a brand environment, I mean, you put 15 features and you put 100 crore rupees and you shove it down. But in your case, the content has to float first. So how do you figure how much is intrusive and how much is non-intrusive? I mean, for example, I quite like how Quota Factory and an Academy came together. It's there. You don't miss it, but it's not in your face. So are there ways to do this? Are there learnings around that of how do brands and marketing ride this piece of content and not convert them into boring broadcast pieces?
I think one simple way is that if the creative team and the brand team from the advertiser work closely together from the very beginning, because then there is a mutual goal and mutual understanding of where we're going. I think that's important. Second is if you treat, I always like personally treating the brand as a character almost, right? Then it helps you think of them as a character in the show versus some hindrance in the show. Can I use it effectively? And of course, if advertisers can, laugh at themselves, if they have a little more of a lighter touch to themselves. Now, obviously, certain advertisers can't do that. Like your insurance, you can't laugh about certain things. But
Though we've done it, I
generally
mean,
speaking,
in marketing we've done it. I mean, insurance brands have done funny campaigns as well.
yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah,
so if you have a sense of humor, then it
yeah,
greatly increases what you can actually do. And I think today you have an audience which understands that stuff, and so how much is too much is always a test. Like it's not, there's no perfect science. I think there is that harmonious blend when it comes together. You will see it and know it, and you always have a sense that okay, if something is too much, actually it hurts both. It hurts the content and hurts the advertiser. And like you have a great piece of content, people don't care if there's a brand in it. That I can tell you today
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Like it doesn't matter to them. And I have again a weird theory, which is that people in India want to know where the money is coming from. So if you show them that hey, like Airtel helped me make this content, they're gonna be like,
Yeah,
okay, cool, Airtel paid for this, that's fine.
yeah.
Like they get it, they're like, okay, theek hai. If you don't show them anything, they're like, how is this guy making this? He kaise ho
Yeah,
raha hai? So I also feel it can work in your favor. And of course,
yeah,
depending on how tongue-in-cheek you are, what your characteristics are as a brand, you can work with the right type of creator also. I think that is,
yeah,
there are people who are very quirky, there are people who are, a little more tongue-in-cheek, there are people who are serious, and all of them you have today, and the depth in the content creation space has improved significantly. So, to me, I think what advertisers can do today is phenomenal compared to what they could do a few years back, which was just the spot. And a spot was obviously the greatest advertising
yeah,
tool ever product ever created. So now you have to adapt that. So I think that, and that's happening. I think people are doing that.
Any benchmark cases in your mind? Any case that you've done, or you look around and say that this is the best way of doing content marketing for a brand or a marketing piece?
I mean, I think there are so many that we've done at this
Yeah.
point, and they worked extremely well, right from the early days when we worked with, brands like, like a Velvet Case, which is our first advertiser. They got insane value, and we worked with them just seamlessly. They, in the very first scene of Little Things, which obviously is the longest running Netflix original, right? To tell you
Yeah.
how this whole thing has been overblown. The first scene of Little Things has a brand integration, right? So today if you went, a lot of people have theories, nahi, ye nahi ho sakta, aise nahi ho sakta, wo nahi kar sakte. But you can do it, all the way to like an Operation MBBS, which we've now run successfully with an academy. Phenomenal success for everybody involved. And I think if you look at even whether it's short form content, long form content, places where we worked with advertisers and worked over a period of time, in a longer period of time,
Yeah.
those have worked extremely well. So
Yeah.
I think, to me, I mean, now at this point, we have many different, advertisers. I mean, today, actually, unlike, let's say, 2015, the advertising mix or the mix of our clients kind of resembles whoever is spending at the national level quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that is something that shows you where, how mature the market has become compared to earlier,
Yeah.
when it was, it used to be a struggle for us to convince
Yeah.
people. Today we don't have to do that. They come to us and they get
Yeah.
it. We're part of their marketing plan,
Yeah.
and I think that's, it's
Yeah.
obviously an honor also, because we've done the hard yards of going to people, but
Yeah.
it also tells you how far the market has come.
Yeah, but tell me, Anirudh, how would you want marketers to think about measurement? Because marketing makes us paranoid about how do I measure this, right? So when it comes to content marketing, what would be the ideal way that you'd like marketers to think about it?
See, as far as I'm concerned, it depends on, don't use one size fits all, which is, use things that are applicable to that particular platform. Second is, always look at engagement, which I think a lot of people do today. Third is also understand where this particular thing fits in your marketing stack, right? Uh, you know, if you look at something, let's say you do a web series, it's going to improve your brand recall, but you shouldn't expect then that your sales will go up in one day. It can. It's not like it's not going to happen. We've seen cases where e-commerce companies or direct to consumer companies have sold out their inventory thanks to a content piece with us. But it doesn't always happen that way. You have to see where it stands. Like, are you looking for click improvements? Are you looking for just a change in perception? If you're changing perception, then you have to measure it accordingly, right? So I think having that sort of horses for courses, understanding is really important. And I think the other way I would look at it is also look at where you can create value, right? There's the hygiene part. Like today, doing web series, etc. To me is doing short form content with like filter copy is like hygiene. You have to do it because
Yeah.
everybody's watching. But when you look at sort of a gaming platform like Loco, it's earlier. So the earlier you take that chance, the more your return is going to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think something to think about, pretty pretty strongly for people. Like they should
Yeah.
think about, how where they're spending the money.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of taking a chance on things, there has to be some value for that stuff, that you must keep that. Other than that, I think now measurement, etc., is less of an issue. Now, of course, when you go to platforms like Hotstar, etc., there's each thing is a different thing. But I think now the market is settling around
Yeah.
sort of simpler metrics, which was not the case, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Understand that. And, You spoke about this earlier about short video platforms and the cautious choice on why you went into game streaming, right? But I mean, the way things are moving and the way everybody wants to become a super app and the way everything is converging, how do you look at likes of Moj and ShareChat? Do you see them as friends, enemies, or ultimately everybody will be everything?
No, I think everyone will find their place. So like Malls and ShareChat are not friends for sure, right? Like they're competing for the same.
Yeah,
They literally have the same product.
yeah,
So they are in a they are competitors and going head on. Now, obviously, they could merge and become friends. But so that's a separate thing. But I know
yeah,
both the teams quite well as
yeah,
well, and I've seen their journey. They've been around for a fairly
yeah,
long time.
yeah,
For us, they are clients, and they're therefore definitely friends. Like a lot of our our talent base can go on to a Moj and or a Josh and create content for them and be in their campaigns, both in their advertising side as well as the content side. So for us, they are just friends. And on when you're looking at Pocket Aces, when you look at Loco, again they are not competitors because they are essentially in a different content format. So when you come to platforms, I feel like unlike in the 90s and 2000s when it was all
yeah,
about which channel you ran and therefore the content thesis of that channel, now it's
yeah,
much more about the content format and the community that you're building around a certain
yeah.
platform. And so there we actually again become not competitors. They could
More
become a marketing
collaborators.
channel for
Yeah,
us. Yeah,
yeah,
they are more collaborators for us there.
yeah,
So yeah, that's how I think about those guys. But for
yeah,
Pocket Aces, they're completely they're just down the value chain. So we
yeah,
provide for them, and we have
yeah,
been doing it quite successfully.
yeah. But you wouldn't your 5 year plan wouldn't be to be a platform.
No, well, Pocket Aces is a content company, so that's going to
Yeah,
remain that way.
that stays like
And
that.
yeah, and Loco is a platform, and again we've
Yeah,
separated the two companies so that
yes,
they are completely separate, nothing to do with each other anymore. And yeah, Pocket and Loco is a
yeah,
complete platform.
yeah, completely. Yeah. And what advice, having been through this awesome journey, what advice would you give younger people? Because today, obviously, there's a startup idea on every dining table, right, and so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
Is it? I mean, what would you say? I mean, a couple of thoughts for the younger generation today.
Yeah, I think number one is that when you evaluate risk, evaluate from a framework of, will something essentially hurt your reputation or cause financial ruin? If those two things are not really happening, I think, tend to over over analyze certain situations, especially if you've been well educated or if you've been trained very, rigorously to work at a big company. So I think, don't worry about risk so much. Take risks, and weirdly, the risks you take earlier are easier because you have more time to recover, and those become learning. So I think get started. I think that's the other thing I always say. Like ideas are a dime a dozen. In fact, most ideas sound good on the dining table actually suck, and
Yeah,
and you have to be naive enough to believe in the idea to start. But once you start, I think you will see that you will find a way in that ecosystem. And these things are not like a math problem with an answer at the back of the book. It's not R.D. Sharma, R.S. Agarwal problem, right? It's these things I think are much more like I say like business problems are much more like a painting competition, right? Like there's generally something that people want, and there are different ways to solve that.
yeah,
And you may come up with a sculpture, someone else may come up with a painting, and someone else may come up with something in between. And yes, there may be a dominant solution, but the others will also find a way of solving that and having certain market share. So as someone who's at zero, all of those are reasonable answers. Like people tell
yeah.
me, oh, Zynga failed. I'm like, bro, if someone made $10 billion worth of a
Yes,
company, like
correct.
that's not a failure in my book. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, they didn't
yeah,
become like it's like Twitter failed. Like
yeah,
yes, it failed in the sense that it's not Facebook, but
yeah.
we don't have to treat everything with that framework of Sharma ji ka beta. You should also
The
treat something
the
that there
ga-
was zero.
on Twitter, the game is still on.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, exactly. None of these are like, look, most businesses in the long run are dead.
Yeah,
So there is no
correct.
question that most things will die. And so again, that's something useful when you're working on a business and you're like, oh no, I could die. Like, you have to know that you will die, like you have to be
Yeah.
comfortable with that, and then just try and stay on your feet because
Yeah.
wonderful things will happen on the journey. So, yeah, for me, it's all about like, finding problems that there is enough depth in, and finding in problems where you genuinely feel passionate about it. Otherwise, join someone who already feels that way, and that's
Yeah.
you. There is I don't believe that some people are founders and some people are not. It's not like that. Like you could be, if I find someone is really passionate, has a vision about something, I could join them, and vice versa. I could lead for some time, right? So it's all dependent on the problem. So for me, the big thing for anyone who's younger and listening is like, go ahead and take risks, man. Like go ahead and do something. If you don't do it, like that's the problem. Like the problem isn't just sitting in the dining table and thinking. Just go ahead and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And I hate when people say, "Oh, ये idea तो मुझे भी आया था." Because
Correct.
every single idea that you have today and tomorrow
It's been
has
thought
been
of,
thought of
yeah.
by someone else.
Correct.
So it's not
Absolutely.
you don't have like it's not हिंदी में कहते हैं ना तुम्हारी जागीर नहीं है वो. So it's just
Yeah.
you go ahead and execute. If you execute well, you will reap the benefits.
No, that's an amazing metaphor that it's a painting competition. It's not a math problem with a single answer. Thank you so much, Anirudh, for such a fantastic conversation. We take a small break and we come back where you get to ask questions of me.
Thank you, Dheeraj.
Anirudh, welcome back, and this is now the mic's turn, the table, so it's your chance to grill me back.
Well, I'm happy that this has happened. Normally, it doesn't happen this way, and I'm glad we could do this.
Yeah.
So there are a few questions for you. So here we go. So, what is one post-pandemic change that you follow in daily life?
It's my health routine. So, just my exercise, which I was very irregular with pre-pandemic. I think I'm able to follow that much more rigorously now. And that's one thing on top of my mind, right? Because through the pandemic, one thing you've been reminded of that there are no assets, your body is your only asset.
Correct.
So that, yeah.
Super. You've obviously had an amazing career in working with so many brands and companies. So what is one brand that you admire deeply?
Lots of brands. In fact, I quite like, for example, some of our own work, if I might say. I mean, I quite like how we're shaping up Spotify, right? From a very Sweden-led international cool brand to saying, okay, how do we get 50 million in India? How do we get 100 million in India, right? And how do you still keep the brand a little cool and aspirational, at the same time build relevance, right? It looks easy when you say that on paper, but it's really, really tough. But that journey is something that I'm really enjoying, and also admire the brand to have that elasticity and allowance to let you go that mile.
Yeah, and they have a phenomenal community. I think
Yeah.
you'll be hard pressed to find a better community
Yeah.
than them. So it's good to see that they're still being flexible about that stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Talking about brands, just shifting gear to content. Is there a content piece that you've seen recently that really moved you?
Content piece. I mean, I keep watching a lot of stuff on OTT, etc. I mean, all pieces are good. I think 1984 was good. We also did something which was in fact considered pre 1984. We actually, and you spoke about Airtel, for the Airtel 5G launch, we recreated Kapil Dev's unbeaten 175, right? And this is not like shot on an actor. This is actually, we actually scanned Kapil Dev, we de-aged him, we turned him into a 3D model, got all the emotions, wrote all the shots with him, and you can actually watch the highlights of that 175, which was never recorded, and you can see Kapil of that time bat. So that again, to my mind, is very close to my heart at this point in time.
That's amazing. I think, as a kid growing up, and I love cricket a lot, like that, to me, I was like, how did they not capture it? Like, it is one of the greatest moments, and I'm so glad that you guys did that. That's insane, and I think good way of showing what technology can do.
Yes,
today.
yeah.
Super. Okay, so if you woke up one morning and found out that you were Elon Musk, what would you do?
what would I do? I would stop chasing Twitter. first and foremost. Right? I would see. So, I mean, coming from a emerging world yet, right? My view is that the big deal that we can use technology for is, of course, I mean, you can use AI and ML to do a new fashion line in Milan. That's fine, right? But there's so many millions of people who need kind of extrication from poverty, from education, from health, and we know how the world is so imbalanced. And my joy is to see technology, data, and power play their role in making the world a more equitable place. So if I had that kind of money, I would divert it more there. Space is fine, but that's where I would divert the money.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think, that's a good lead into my next question, which is, what is one problem you're super passionate about, which is not related to your current business?
Yeah, it's that. I mean, my heart goes. I mean, I'm a small town boy. Lived through small towns. My dad was intelligence bureau. We kept getting transferred, and I've seen the real life so closely, right? And what you and I do, and what I do, especially in advertising, can sometimes be so far removed from the realities on ground. Therefore, the whole idea of what I call access, right? I mean, whether through education, through opportunities, through technology, how do we provide people who don't have access to resources and opportunities using all the tools that we have at our beck and call today? That's my biggest passion point. We try and see how we can bung that in for all the work that we keep doing for the brand. How do we build education? How do we build access to opportunities for people? But that's the thing closest to my heart.
Wow, fabulous. Again, good segment to my next question, which is, if you could have one superpower, what would that be?
To use technology to change the plight of millions in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I feel a lot of people do lip service to that, and I think,
Yeah.
Especially the more developed world, I think
Yeah.
there are simpler and more profoundly easier ways to solve problems, but
Yeah.
we always seem to be playing, being asked to do the harder things, even though we've suffered for so many years.
Yeah. I mean, when we were doing some work for Google at some point in time, and the whole rail Wi-Fi and the fact that people actually come to the railway station to study, right? I mean, it's such a fantastic use of technology. I mean, my heart broke when there were cases of people, jumping to suicide during pandemic because they didn't have access to internet or mobile phones and so on and so forth. I mean, this technology can be such an equitable force, and yet it's such a big divider in the life that we live in. And that, to my mind, is the bipolar situation of the world to be solved for.
Yeah, I think the fact that the telco prices and data prices in India are so low now.
Yeah.
I think it's such a big advantage. I mean, traveling anywhere else abroad now, you feel, and used to be the opposite when we were younger.
Yes.
Like it always, the ISD call was very expensive.
Yeah, and the roaming calls, right? You would.
Yeah. But not anymore. It's. I think that when the access changes, I think the world will change profoundly.
Yeah.
Okay. Just the last question. If you were a product, what would be your tagline?
It's a tough one, huh? What would be my? So, I mean, the crux of what I enable to do is I help brands scale with speed. So my tagline would be somewhere in that zone. Yeah.
Love that. Scale with speed. That's my motto.
Yeah.
I'm a believer in that mission.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anirudh. Amazing having you on this show. And let's catch up sometime soon. Catch a real coffee and a real drink.
Yeah, thank you, Dheeraj. So nice being here. Really enjoyed the conversation, and it was nice to hear about your interests outside of what you and I do. And I think we'd love to catch up more on that also in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.